Welcome back. A number of organizations, including activists, actors and other creatives, held a picket outside the United States Embassy today. They are unhappy about attempts by some American organizations in the creative industries to challenge South Africa's efforts to update copyright legislation. This follows the passing of the contentious Copyright Amendment Bill, which is now awaiting President Cyril Ramaphosa's signature, as well as the Performers Protection Bill. And to tell us more about this issue, I'm joined in studio by David Lydall from the South African creators organization ReCreateZA and Musician Tebogo Sithathu. Gentlemen, a very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tebogo, I'm going to start with you. First of all, you marched to the United States Embassy. What came out of that march? What transpired?
Okay, I think let's first talk about the reason for marching there. We wanted to send a very clear message to the US government to say we are not a colony. We are a Republic of South Africa, so they should give us space to enact our laws, particularly in protection of the most vulnerable in society, and it's the state's responsibility to protect the most vulnerable. So they're wanting to sanction South Africa and disinvest and come up with nonsensical allegations that we're violating international treaties is not right. So they should actually, just give us a space. That's why we did it, yeah.
All right. Now, David, for purposes of understanding the basic tenets of this march, who was involved?
A very wide or broad base of organizations. So Treatment Action Campaign, Right to Know, Blind SA and a number of affiliates.
SABC,
the South African Democratic Teachers Union, the South African Guild of Actors, and then just a bunch of other activists, photographers, musicians, actors, basically 500 people from different parts of society that will all be affected by this bill in a positive way.
All right. So any response from the American government?
No, they were pretty quiet. So they did let us come and hand over the memorandum to them, but then they didn't really want to engage with us. They didn't want to sign it. They didn't want to talk to us. So unsurprisingly, no, they didn't really want to engage.
Yeah, because I was really offended that they knew about the march, the picket, and they knew we were coming there. Under normal circumstances, then they should come out, somebody should come out to receive the memorandum. So they were so arrogant as usual that they actually requested that about 2 or 3 of us should come in there, which I actually recused myself from that because I thought it was highly disrespectful of them to even behave like that.
So they requested you to come in and refuse to accept the memorandum?
Yeah, so normally, in a situation of a march, you have somebody come out, meet the crowd, and then we can address them and, kind of hand over the memorandum, read the memorandum, and then somebody from their side, receives it and perhaps respond to say, we will get back to you, blah, 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 blah. They didn't even do that. I think that it was very arrogant of them. And I think it shows with their proxies in this country, those that are opposing the Copyright Amendment Bill because of they continuously benefit out of our intellectual property, and they are so arrogant even to stoop so low to want to actually disinvest money out of the Republic, not only in the creative space or in the IP space, but also touching other sectors as well. Because of, it's kind of holding a gun to our head as a country, because of they've seen President Ramaphosa has been on a drive to woo investors to come into the country because of the joblessness that we've been facing. So for them to want to now worsen the situation, I think it's bullying. There's nothing other than that except for bullying.
But David, who do you think is behind the opposition to these copyright bills? I mean, it benefits so many South African creatives.
Well, it's really obvious. There's an organization called the International Intellectual Property Association, which is basically a massive lobby organization that represents organizations like Sony, Warner Brothers, Pearson. So these massive organizations or corporations which make huge profits off creative works. So in South Africa, they have also their local proxies in the Coalition for Effective Copyright, which is once again same sort of membership. They're basically opposed to this bill because they don't want South African creatives to get a greater piece of the pie. They like the status quo because the status quo means South African actors get no royalties. It means that Americans get to use something called fair use, and we don't. They get to use our content for free, but we're not allowed to touch theirs. So it's really a situation where they're saying, well, we have one set of rules for us, and these are really great for us, but you're not allowed to have those rules. No, you have to pay us more money. They also are deeply opposed to the whole idea that we change sort of the dynamics of how money moves around. At the moment, 70% of all the money we spend on books goes straight to Americans and Europeans as a result of the owning of copyright and publishing. So what these laws fundamentally do is they basically say we're going to change the rules a little bit so that they don't just benefit these foreign massive multinational corporations and also benefit local creatives.
Yeah, this certainly raises the questions with regards to the diplomatic relationship between South Africa and the Americans, and it also raises the question as to what really is at stake for South Africa's trade under the generalized system of preference.
Yeah, well, as usual, the Americans are very arrogant. I mean, you had the Secretary Mike Pompeo and you know, at the AU talking nonsense that we're going down the path. I mean, when our people were abused, when land was grabbed, people were dispossessed with the Apartheid Land Act, where were they? Why didn't they tell the apartheid regime that they're going down the wrong path? So who the hell are they to come and tell us that we're going down the wrong path? Because of what we're doing, actually, what's happening is that we are not violating, I repeat, we are not violating any treaties. And if we were, then the bill somewhat would be unconstitutional. And I think the president would have sent it back to Parliament by now, because remember, the president can only send back the bill if they cannot pass the constitutional muster. So the fact that we are not violating treaties, I'm sure it would have been a reason for him to send it back. So I think also the president should be a bit decisive on this. We're very disappointed.
Yeah, the fact that these bills are still in his in-tray, unsigned.
Close to 1 year.
Yeah, close to a year. What seems to be the problem? What seems to be causing the delay?
I can tell you one thing. If he's not signing now, you see, I don't have a problem. And the guys who are fighting us who say, no, they talk all this, come up with conspiracy stories that we've been paid by tech companies to push for the bill. No. For me and for us, it's not about that. We can scream, shout here, they can scream, shout wherever, but the ball is in the court of the president. Only him alone can either sign or send it back. So what the gripe I have with him is that he's indecisive because of he's wasting time. Because of he should just, if he doesn't feel that they will pass the test.
What do you think causes his indecisiveness?
I think he's scared of the Americans. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but it's a fact. The fact that you're hearing these loud voices, and I'm listening to his statements, the Joseph Shabalala legendary funeral, what he said about, he's mentioned about the copyright, he said, we should take everyone on board. How the hell do you take everyone on board? Do you think the guy who's making money, who's milking it today, is going to allow you to change the laws for the most vulnerable? You are government, for God's sake. You are the state. You have a responsibility to look after the most vulnerable of society. Who drafted those laws? It's Parliament of the ANC government in the 5th administration. So he has a responsibility. It doesn't matter, it was Madiba, it was Mbeki, it was Zuma, and it's him. It's the same ANC government that we support. So he must not be swayed by white monopoly capital, in particular foreign white monopoly capital.
Now, David, I mean, you've been quite vocal about this issue, and do you reckon that you're being vocal and this kind of picket will sort of form a persuasive precedent in what might follow in African markets a little later?
Definitely.
Absolutely, and I think it's really critical. If you actually look at what they're doing right now, it's a form of filibustering. Every day that we wait to sign these bills into law, people like Vatizo Ndara get messed over, right? The reason she had to make such a public appeal about how she was being mistreated was because we don't have protections in place. So for them, they win just by the bill sitting on his desk. We cannot do anything. If the bill is on his desk, we cannot go and fight him. If the bill is on his desk, we cannot go and change the law. We cannot enact the law. And even once these bills are passed into law, it has to still go through regulation. So it will take a lot of time, and that's another fight that needs to happen. So this is pretty much the worst case scenario, where it's sitting on his desk. There is no clarity on how we can fix it or what we can do or how we can move forward. It's just stuck there.
Now, the International Intellectual Property Alliance believes that, the Performance Protection Amendment Bill and the Copyright Amendment Bill are not enough to protect intellectual property. So, do you not think that South Africa should rather shore up or even, reinforce provisions in these legislation that seek to protect intellectual property?
I think that's a red herring, because what we're essentially talking about is the same laws they have in the United States, for the most part. So they're just saying that because they don't want us to have the same laws as them. Fundamentally, the reason why we're very, very confident that should this review conclude, it will be in our favor, is because we are not doing anything completely radical, really. The provisions in the law are pretty much in line with international best practices. The reason they don't want it is because what it fundamentally does is removes this overwhelming monopoly of power that's present in these giant multinational corporations and gives some of it to the local creatives, be them writers, be them photographers, be them artists, be them filmmakers. That's where the power shift happens, and they will refuse that no matter the reason. It's not an ideological, consistent position they take.
But fair enough, I do get that. But my understanding of the IIPA stance is that there is a loophole in these pieces of legislation with regards to the protection of intellectual property. I'm still not getting that from you.
No. They talk about fair use. Fair use is a tool that they use to demonize this copyright amendment bill, and they actually sort of propagate propaganda around fair use. The way they explain fair use, it's unfortunate. The music industry per se, in particular, is so captured by the explanation, which is propaganda.
Yeah.
I spoke to, I was on Twitter. In fact, one of the actors, sent me a screenshot of Twitter message from Silo Magega Ngube. And immediately I called him. I said, "Do you understand what you're talking about?" And I realized that he actually tweeted on something that he actually wasn't even clear about, because of what they say about fair use is that if you're a copyright owner or a creator, somebody or a big tech company can just use your stuff without paying you, then the owners will be on you to litigate. We don't want litigation. It's an expensive exercise. But fair use comes with exceptions and limitations. That's not what they're telling people. And unfortunately, our creatives in particular don't read. And I'll keep saying this, they do not read. And I've never had the coalition encourage artists to read. What they encourage them to do is to listen to their lies and listen to their propaganda. I've been in the music industry for 23 years. Some are even saying, no, but Tebogo is the only one fighting for this bill to be signed. Where are the artists? The artists don't read. So I'm in what I'm doing because of I am taking a backseat from performing so that I can empower myself. So what I'm saying is that fair use is what has made American entertainment industry what it is today, which we look up to. SABC. Everybody, we listen to American crap all the time. It doesn't mean that we don't have good heritage and good musicians, good creators in this country, but they dominate. Remember, who runs the music industry in South Africa? Who runs the collecting societies? Is the big multinationals, all the big companies you can think about. The so-called independents, they are not that independent. We have to make deals to survive, but you get your product, your master, you give it to the major, they do the licensing, or whether you do the JV or what, the balance is skewed. You have to do it to survive in the industry. So at the end of it all is that they don't want us to have what they have. Why? Because they actually want to milk this country of its creative content. Solomon Ninda family was saved by a provision that exists in the Copyright Amendment Bill, a reversion right. After 25 years as a creator, you are allowed to get your IP back. It's not happening. If I've signed a deed of assignment to a publisher, they own my stuff for the rest of my life.
Gentlemen, just listening to you, I get the sense that you believe that the Americans are bulldozing their way around South Africa's creative industry. What could possibly be their interest then in South Africa's creative industry?
It's money.
Money.
That's all it is.
That's all it is to it. I mean, we're talking about an unequal society in the world, South Africa, one of the most unequal. Access to education. You know how expensive books are for those young students. We want to empower society. We talk about the fourth industrial revolution. How can you not have provisions that will allow for people to make research, for you guys to publish news? Fair use is about that. As long as you use somebody's intellectual property, not the entire copyright material, just snippets of it, so that you are allowed to publish news, to inform society, to be transparent. That should be allowed.
Right.
For anything, if you had to innovate, you must start from somewhere. You get inspired by somebody's work, you just improve on the innovation.
Right, David?
Yeah, it's engaging in homage, it's engaging in satire. Those sort of things right now are very, very difficult or very expensive to do in South Africa. Books, as an example, on average, a book costs 3 times more in South Africa than it does in America. Why? And the simple answer is because our current laws are so archaic that they allow this sort of exploitation, this almost monopolistic behavior, in which these big companies can basically take as much money out of our country as we want. We're also arguing that these bills will create huge amounts of growth opportunities. At the moment, a show like The Daily Show by Trevor Noah in the United States is not possible to make in South Africa because all those little snippets he uses
can't be allowed.
Would cost so much money that it would be impossible to do. As a result, we cannot compete with American counterparts. And it's not just in that sector. It's and particularly in a lot of fourth industrial revolution sectors like coding and software development, artificial intelligence, those sort of things. They all rely on fair use principles, which we lack in South Africa.
Okay. Blind people, as with this, they don't have access because of the 1978 copyright bill. So it is unconstitutional. By President not signing this one, blind people are blocked from accessing their rights.
Now that you've picketed and you've delivered the memorandum of demands, where to from here? Have you given them some sort of a timeline?
Well, it's not up to them. I said it's up to the president. You see, if we had it away, in fact, the only reason why we went to the U.S. Embassy is to say, show them the middle finger. You know, just piss off. Give us space. But it's the president.
The president. Why didn't you go to him?
No. Well, you see, we've written to him collectively. We've given every reason to say sign the bills. So all I can say to him, he said, "Tumamena, si tumayena, zitume president, sign the bill and then show us you are the president of the republic. If you don't sign, then we know that you've been micromanaged from other territories. The U.S. is controlling you. We will see. We will have to see."
David and Tebogo, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it. Well, that was David Lydall from ReCreateZA and musician Tebogo Sithathu. This is the Global SABC News. We'll have more coming up at the top of the hour.